friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about very important statement of the President of Ukraine, Zelensky. If you remember, just yesterday he was talking about the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. He stated that one of the diesel generators that provide power to the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant has failed. The emergency situation at the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant has been going on for the 7th day. The situation is critical due to Russian shelling. The station has been disconnected from the power grid. It is supplied with electricity from diesel generators. So most likely by these attacks, by these statements, Zelensky was trying to force Russia to give him back the territory of the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. This is very important question in the peaceful settlement of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and most likely Zelensky will never allow the Russians to use the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant until the special military operation finishes. At least this is what Zelensky is thinking about. But the problem is for Zelensky, of course, that the Russians have completely different opinion. The Russians decided to mirror the actions that were made by Zelensky, and during the previous 24 hours, during the previous night, the Russians carry out massive missile and drone attack all over the entire energy infrastructure of Ukraine, all over the entire territory of Ukraine. So the most important and the most powerful attacks took place in the northern part of Ukraine, in the Chernigov region. Let's take a look at this video. This is the city of Slavutich, and this video was published yesterday in the evening by civilians. As you can see, there is a smoke screen above the city. Later, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation published this video, and here we can see a very powerful and very big energy facility located to the southwest of the city of Chernigov. And now we see how the Russians began bombing and attacking this territory with dozens of drones, with dozens of guns. As you can see, there are lots of explosions. The Russians managed to deal significant damage. The Russians used once again dozens of drones, and this entire energy facility was completely destroyed, most likely without any chances for Ukrainians to repair this, or at least it will take a lot of time for this. Furthermore, this is not just a regular energy facility. According to information we have, this energy facility supply and support the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The sources reported that yesterday there was a blackout at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, power outages to the sarcophagus of the destroyed Unit 4, Ministry of Energy of Ukraine. The nuclear power plant found itself in this state after the strike on the power facility in Slavutich. So once again, Zelensky was bombing the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant with the purpose to force the Russians to give this power plant back to Ukraine, but say he got completely different result from the Russian side. The Russians began bombing and attacking facilities, energy facilities of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, making another threat for Ukraine and for the city of Kiev. If the situation continues escalating, and if Ukrainians make situation that the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant will be destroyed, most likely the Russians will do the same with the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, and this can lead to complete catastrophe for Ukraine, and not just for Ukraine but for the entire Eastern Europe.
Du nok på YouTube og ser en musiker, der kan det hele. Men vidste du, at der en YouTube Music app, der kan?
Now let's move further. The Russians attacked not just the settlement of Slavutich. The Russians carried out massive drone attack on the city of Kiev. During the previous night, we got lots of videos how Russians were bombing the city. We can see lots of explosions. Lots of explosions were recorded. The Russians managed to deal significant damage. The Russians once again were trying to destroy Ukrainian energy facilities. Later, we got report that the Minister of Energy of the Ukrainian government also confirmed strikes on energy infrastructure in the Kiev region. Russia struck energy infrastructure in the Kiev region. Residents of the Kiev and Chernigov regions were left without power. Power outages are also being observed in the Dnipropetrovsk region. So this is very critical situation. We are entering very cold period of year. We are coming to the late autumn and winter, and if Russia continues attacking Ukraine energy facilities, that can lead to another wave of migration. So people will basically leave the territory of Ukraine in the western direction towards the European countries. Furthermore, the Russians attacked the city of Dnipro. When talking about this city, we have better picture that gives us better understanding of the situation. So this is the moment. This is the moment, as you can see, when Russians attacked energy facilities. Then there was a very huge blue light, and then the electricity completely turned off along the road. This is another video from another angle. The same situation. The Russians attacked energy facility, and then we can see a power outage in the settlement. So this very important city, the city of Dnipro, the Ukrainians use this city for the logistic purposes. They move their forces, they redeploy their forces and units through the city in the direction of the line of combat contact. And another city was attacked by Russia. We are talking about the city of Odessa. As for this city, the Russians were attacking not just objects of the energy facility. The Russians were attacking the infrastructural object, the transport infrastructure, with the purpose to destroy trains, to destroy depots, to destroy different equipment that Ukrainians use for the railway services. And most likely, according to updates we have, the Russians managed to get this massive strike on Ukrainian targets near Odessa. Powerful fires, energy infrastructure hit. In the Odessa region, attack drones targeted energy infrastructure. The strikes resulted in power and water outages in several districts of Odessa. A powerful fire is raging at the strike site. So this is the consequences. As you can see, this photo was made this morning. We can see that the entire train was completely damaged and destroyed. Here we can see the video of attack from another angle. Some civilian was making a video of how Russians were bombing the transport infrastructure of Ukraine in this part of the city, or in this part of Ukraine. So as we can see, the Russians carry out one of the biggest attacks since the beginning of the special military operation. We're not talking about a number of drones that were involved in this attack. We are talking about the results, and most likely the Russians will continue. Anyway, let's wait and see what is going to be next. But once again, the situation is getting very critical. Now let's talk about the situation on the ground, and first let's talk about the Zaporozhye direction, where the Russians continue their offensive operation. According to information we have, during the previous 12 hours, the Russians improved their positions in the direction of the Uspenovka fortified area. The Russians got a bit closer to the territory. Now the Russians are trying to outflank farms that located between the Uspenovka fortified area and the settlement of Novogrigorovka. We're talking about this facility. The Russians are trying to capture the village of Novogrigorovka and these facilities, and if Russians are able to do this, then the Russians will be able to begin offensive operation in the direction of Uspenovka fortified area. They will be able to establish a certain FPV drone control over the territory, so the Russians are very close to begin battle for this area. Furthermore, as for the Poltavka fortified area, if you remember, just yesterday we were talking that the Russians answered the territory of the settlement and that the clashes had already begun, and today we got report that the Russians managed to improve their positions once again. This information today was confirmed by pro-Ukrainian resources. They confirmed that the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, answered the settlement of Poltavka, and now they're trying to dig in deeper. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the area of the settlement by the name of Novopavlovka. The Russians during the previous 12 hours began another artillery preparation in this area. The Russians began bombing the city of Novopavlovka and positions of the armed forces of Ukraine around the settlement with aviation, with FAPs, with artillery, and with multiple launch rocket systems. And the most important is that the Russians, as a result of this attack, of this artillery preparation, managed to destroy the bridge along the road T0428, this one, and this can lead to huge problems with Ukrainian logistics. I would like to remind you that currently the Russians are fighting for the settlement of Ivanovka. They're trying to attack the settlement from the south. The Russians crossed the river of Volchia several weeks ago. Now there are very heavy clashes for the territory of the settlement, and by these attacks the Russians managed to cut this road that goes from the settlement of Gavrilovka in the direction of Novopavlovka, this one. So furthermore, Furthermore, now we see that the Russians destroyed the bridge along the TO428 road that goes between the settlements of Mizhov and Novopavlovka. Now we see that the settlement of Novopavlovka has no logistic, has no roads. Normal roads, of course, there are still possibilities to use fields, but obviously this is not the same thing as the Ukrainians in this area used to have before, which means that most likely the Russians are about to begin their major offensive operation with the purpose to take under complete control the territory of the settlement, while the Ukrainians haven't managed to restore their logistic. Now let's discuss the situation in the Pokrovsk direction. During the previous 24 hours, the pro-Ukrainian resources reported that Ukrainians managed to improve their position significantly. Once again, without anything that can confirm this, of course, we have adjusted the map based on the report of the reliable resources, most likely. According to pro-Ukrainian resources, they managed to finish the battle for the settlement of Novoshakhova. The settlement was completely colored as a gray zone or contested area. We are waiting for additional updates. And according to pro-Ukraine resources, they managed to clear completely the territory between the settlements of Zolotoy Kolodец, Kucherev Yar. So based on this report of pro-Ukrainian resource, we have adjusted the map. We have just one video from this area to the east of the settlement of Dorozhny, and here we can see how Ukrainians most likely were trying to counterattack or to encircle the Russians on the territory of Dorozhny using Bradley armored vehicle. They managed to get there, to land most likely infantry, and then Russians began attacking the Bradley infantry fighting vehicles with dozens of drones, and as a result of all these attacks, the fighting vehicle was completely destroyed. These episodes took place exactly in this area. We believe that Ukrainians counterattacked in this direction, in the southern direction from the settlement of Ivanovka and Novoshakhova, managed to land infantry somewhere here and to block Russians on the territory of Dorozhny. Later, the Russians destroyed these infantry fighting vehicles, but nobody knows what is the status of these lines, whether there are still Ukrainians or not. Anyway, we adjusted the map, and now we believe that the Russians were caught in cauldron or were encircled on the territory of Dorozhny. Now we should wait for the Russian counterattack in this area as well. And another important thing is that today, according to information we have, the president of the Russian Federation will give a speech, and the sources are saying that this speech is going to be discussed by every single person in the world. Russia most likely will talk about frozen assets, about Ukraine, about relations with the United States of America, with Ukraine. Most likely the president of Russia will reveal the Alaska summit agreements with Trump. So lots of very interesting updates, most likely that will a bit affect the situation in the world. And another interesting escalation is coming from France. Today we got this video. According to information we have, French special forces boarded and seized a Russian oil tanker sailing off France's western coast moments ago. So this video we can see how French special forces managed to short the distance to the Russian oil tanker that most likely belongs to the Shadow Fleet. We have just several episodes of how special forces landed. They began checks, inspections, so the ship was arrested according to information we have. Later we got additional details about the situation. So French authorities are investigating an oil tanker that is subject to sanctions and suspected of being part of Russia's Shadow Fleet, which may have been a launch pad for mystery drone flights that forced the closure of airports in Denmark last week. So, as we discussed a few days ago, Zelensky stated that drones were launched from these, let's say, ships of Shadow Fleet, and we believe that now the European countries are trying to find the legal way how to arrest, how to close basically the Baltic Sea, how to close the access to the world ocean for Russia from the St. Petersburg, and this is just the first step. Another important statement made by the Chief of Staff for the French Army has stated that forces must be ready as early as tonight for high-intensive warfare, warning of potential direct military confrontation in the near future with Russia over the defense of a NATO ally in Eastern Europe. So the situation continues escalating, and it's very difficult to say how these things are going to be developed. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds you to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a